Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise to make a presentation on this all-important bill before this honorable House. Mr. Speaker, today's debate will be recorded as one of the most important. In fact, it could be described as one of those defining moments in our parliamentary democracy and political development. We are debating, Mr. Speaker, a bill that goes at the heart of our parliamentary representation. And so I contend that this is a significant, important moment in the legislative and political history of this country. Mr. Speaker, there has been quite a lot of discussions, you could even say controversy, conflict about this bill, and maybe rightly so. But I want to suggest to you and to this honorable House, in fact, to the entire country, Mr. Speaker, that the measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands in times of challenge and controversy.
That's right.
And so I want to take my stand on this very important bill. I want to suggest, Mr. Speaker, not suggest, I want to indicate, I want to say that the indisputable, incontrovertible fact is that the government is responsible for all functionaries in Parliament. The government is responsible. That is incontrovertible, cannot be disputed, cannot be denied. That is a fact. And Mr. Speaker, we have to come to realize and acknowledge what is true and what is not true. And that is a fact. The government is responsible for all the functionaries, the speaker, the deputy speaker, the clerk, the deputy clerk, the stenographers, providing the sergeant of arms, providing all the functionaries of Parliament. That is the function of the government. It is also a fact, Mr. Speaker, that in the Parliament from 2004 to 2010, there was a member of the opposition benches who was the Speaker of Deputy Speaker of the House. But I've searched, Mr. Speaker, and maybe somebody could assist me. I can't find any other parliament anywhere of the world where we have a deputy speaker who was on the opposition benches. That was an aberration. That don't happen normally. The deputy speaker in the last parliament facilitated that, and that is all right. That is fine. If the opposition wants to facilitate it, to facilitate that. That happened, but that has not happened anywhere else in the world at any other time. You'll not find that. The Senator, Minister of Tozen made the point, he gave out all the senators that we have had since independence, I think he said. Since independence, he named them here. And between 1983 and 1995, when Labour became the government, between those periods, 1983 to 1995, the Deputy Speaker was a member of the government. Before 1983, I could go back to 1952. And for obvious reasons, that was the year of adult suffrage. From 1952 to 1980, when Labour lost government, the Deputy Speaker was always a member of the government. Always, without exception. And between 1995 and 2004, the Deputy Speaker was a member of the government. We had in 2004 to 2010 a member of the opposition, because the member of the opposition facilitated that. That was an aberration. That is not how it normally happens. And so, people have to be honest and truthful and to say how things operate. And Mr. Speaker, I am speaking like this because I, the senator opposite, told you about my involvement in getting him to be the Speaker of the House, the Deputy Speaker, outside of my instructions from the cabinet. I went myself. I went home by him. I said, look, we would like you to be the Deputy Speaker of the House. He said, boy, Sam, I don't think I could do that. He gave me the reason, then he didn't give it. Well, he gave me that reason. The reason he didn't give me the one about being the legal advisor for a case. He didn't give me that. What he told me was that he was sent here by the People's Action Movement, and he's here to represent them. He does not want at any time, when he has to speak and so on, he's in the chair. I told him, you see, Mr. Speaker, it's always good to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. You will not get caught at any time.
That's right. That's right.
I told him, you see, the Times, the member was Deputy Speaker for 6 years, 2004 to 2010. I said a number of times he has been in the chair. I could count them on the fingers of one hand. He says, I'm not impressed. I don't want to be there. I want to do the work that I'm sent to do. And in fact, it doesn't have anything to do with me. I will go and report. I told him, I said, your family, this is your family tradition. He says, I told him, your parents, your father, your uncle, they used to be acting governor. And they used to be warden in Anguilla and warden in Nevis. Your brother is the president of the Caribbean Court of Justice. It is in that kind of tradition. This will look good for your biography, for your CV.
He was the president of the Caribbean Court. Chief Justice transferred.
He was Chief Justice somewhere over the world, in Africa. head of the tribunal for something or the other. Yeah. I say, you see, this is the tradition of your family. This is good for you. It will look good on your CV and so on. You're not impressed. So, Mr. Speaker, I did all that I could. Even though I know it was not the responsibility of the opposition, I still did what I could to get it because I think we wanted the matter resolved. But the point I'm making, Mr. Speaker, is that this is a function of the government. It is the government's responsibility.
Constitution don't say a lot of things.
Go ahead. You made the point.
That is just exactly. How else could it be done?
Constitution takes place in convention.
How else could it be done, Mr. Speaker? How could anywhere in the world people are put in the responsibility? How come that the opposition is not responsible for the Speaker and the clerk?
That's what you said. The speaker is elected by the parliament.
By the parliament, but it is, you never have a speaker anywhere in the world who is not a member of the government, who is not a supporter of the government. Who is
We
not
must come from the parliament.
I said, so, I know, I've studied them. I have studied them.
Look at Guyana.
I have studied all of them.
Go.
That is the point. I don't come and talk things that I don't know about. And so, Mr. Speaker, I'm saying that we have to understand that that's how it works.
Sorry.
Mr. Speaker, we are in a parliamentary democratic system that puts the preponderance of decision-making on the elected representative. That is what it is about. That's how the democratic system works. It is the responsibility of the elected people. And that is why, Mr. Speaker, I was amazed at the argument this morning about the House, about the Westminster system, about the English Parliament. Completely different to us here. That is a bicameral system. If we want a bicameral system, we must decide that's what we want. In fact, that is what the mover said. We are restructuring Parliament. Who his words?
Reform.
I'm quoting him. Reforming. And maybe that is where we need to go. To reform Parliament and get a bicameral system of government where you have senators and you have representatives. If that's what you want to do, we must do that. But you can't come here in the middle of a parliamentary term to reform Parliament without going to the people. How are you going to do that? That is not how democracy works. That is not how it works. Mr. Speaker, our system here isn't different from our system of senators. Because, here, I think we must be the only, well, we are the one of two countries that don't have a bicameral system. But also, Dominica as well, I'm very glad, thank you. But also, in our system, Mr. Speaker, when you contest an election, you can't be nominated to our parliament, In mostly all the other parliaments.
The Hilbert Clause. The Billy Hilbert Clause.
In most of the other parliaments. Because, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, that's basically our frame of reference in terms of senators. It is well known, Mr. Speaker, In fact, Mr. Speaker, I mentioned 1952. In fact, in 1952, I mean, I could even go back to 1937, but like I said, for obvious reasons, I want to start at 1952. In 1952, but just let me to mention that in 1937, we had 3 elected members and 1 nominated member. In 1952, it was increased to 7 elected members, 5 on St. Kitts and 2 on Nevis. Mr. Speaker, in those days, they weren't called senators. Senators was a term that was introduced in the 1983 Constitution. But they were called, Mr. Speaker, nominated members. And you had 2 nominated members between 1952 and 1961. So I said it increased from 3 in 1937 to 52 to 7 from 1952 to 61. In 1961, Mr. Speaker, it was increased again. It was increased from 7 to 9 between 1961 and 1984. 9. 7 on St. Kitts and 2 on Nevis, and we had the same number of senators, 2. We had 2 between 1952 and 1961, and we had 2 between 1961 and 1984. 2. Mr. Speaker, we're talking about the framers of the Constitution, the people who framed the Constitution. Because, Mr. Speaker, in 1984, the members of the House were increased from 9 to 11. We increased by 1 in St. Kitts. St. Kitts went from 7 to 8, and we increased by 1 in Nevis. Nevis went from 2 to 3. And you know how much the senators increased by, Mr. Speaker? Make a guess. 3. Mr. Speaker, every time from 1952 that you had an increase in the members of parliament, it came through the electoral system, the electoral process. That was the focus, that was the emphasis, because that is how a democracy works. Came through that process. And the people who wrote that in the Constitution, that you could have 2/3 of the representatives, they consciously and deliberately, when they were increasing the members of parliament, they increased it through the elected representative, they increased it from 9 to 11, and they increased the senators by 1. They increased the elected representatives by 2, and they increased the senators by 1. That was an accident. They write it, they know it's there. They know it's there. And so, Mr. Speaker, that is the point we're making. That we have to understand the democratic process and keep to that, the systems. Democracy is a fragile plant which you have to cultivate and tend carefully, otherwise you destroy it. You have to guard it carefully. And we're saying, Mr. Speaker, I'm saying 2 things. One, that it is the government's responsibility to get a deputy speaker. In fact, it's the government's responsibility. Parliament, of course. That's the broad term. But the government, the government, the government, the government, the government is the executive. The government is the people who makes things happen in Parliament. That is why
The Parliament make things happen in Parliament.
We can cancel Parliament, yeah.
It hasn't come here. Once it comes here, the Parliament that
If
it
he has
doesn't
a
what
parliament,
happens.
he's postponed his budget. The speaker is who
I have the right to postpone the budget if I want
That's
to.
a totally different thing.
So, Mr. Speaker, the point I'm making is that this is to fundamental, in fact, reform. I mean, the mover of the bill was talking about reform. And I think it's not really a good thing in the middle of a parliamentary term to have a reform. And without the consultation of the wider community. And so, Mr. Speaker, I'm saying and Mr. Speaker, people are talking about math. I'm not a mathematician, but I'm a politician. And I understand the role of Parliament, the members of Parliament, I understand elections, I understand the role of senators and all of that. I understand those things. Those are what I'm concerned about. And I'm saying that, Mr. Speaker, that in a Parliament of 11 elected members, 6 senators is disproportionate, is too high a proportion of senators to be in a unicameral system of government. This is something, like I said, where we are tending towards a bicameral system of government. And if that is what we want, that is what we must go to. And that must be part of the political debate. That must be canvassed. The mover said that because of the financial situation, maybe that is not something that we will want to do in a country like ours with limited financial resources. And maybe that is why we are one of two who have not gone that route. But if we are going to keep this formulation, this structure, we have to be sure that we don't overload it. We don't make it disproportionate. That we don't dilute the people's representative, the elected representative. That means something, Mr. Speaker, especially in this country. Let me tell you something. The first time in the history of this country that you had a senator holding a cabinet position was in 1984. The first time. That was new to us. That was a post-independence structure and formulation. The first nominated member, well, senator, like I say, post-independence, to hold a cabinet position in this country was in 1984. First time it happened. And then it was only one. Because, Mr. Speaker, and we know the reaction to that, nobody voted for you. Nobody voted for you. Anyhow you do move anything and so on, nobody voted for you. That's our culture. That's how we see things. We have to be sensitive to these things. That That's how we grow up here in this country. In fact, so much so, Mr. Speaker, I don't know which class it is, so much so that we believe that if the people reject you at the polls, don't come in the house. That's what we believe. In other countries, that is fine. In here, in St. Kitts, we say, once you go out there, and you think the people say they want you, will not impose it on the people. No. And the people of this country have a certain kind of way about people who, because it is, that's how the no taxation without representation came about in the United States. But if you want to do things, make laws and taxpayers, you got to get elected. No taxation without representation. That's where it comes from. That is democracy. That is the foundation of the democratic process. No, you can't do that. No taxation without representation. That's where it comes from. And so we have to be careful about that. And Mr. Speaker, I really have a difficulty with imposing, with employing, with recruiting, with doubling the number of senators. 100%. Doubling it from 3 to 6. I have a problem with that. And no increase in elected members. Every time.
That's more costly. And that comes by boundaries.
Democracy ain't gonna cost. Democracy ain't gonna cost. Nothing is too expensive to protect and promote the democratic process.
I like that. I like that.
Cost is not a factor.
Yeah. It just doesn't feel good to me. It just don't taste right. That's really not, for me, a good thing. It says something about the way we do things. At a swoop. One swoop. Doubling, 100%, doubling the number of senators without any reference to the elected members. I said that is something like we were looking for a Senate. A bicameral system of government, if that's what we want. Canvass that. And so, Mr. Speaker, I really have a little problem with that. Mr. Speaker, it is being given. The bill, of course, is a short bill in, like somebody said, in construct. 2 pages. But Mr. Speaker, it is as innocent and innocuous as it is. There's loaded things, Mr. Speaker. Loaded things. And you see, Mr. Speaker, people like to take people for granted, you know. People like to take people for granted. And people have taken your patience and your tolerance and your forbearance to think that you're either stupid or something. Well, Mr. Speaker, there's a lot more. A lot more, Mr. Speaker. The bill, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, could, like I said, some people feel is innocuous, innocent, and does mean things. But I've read more into that than simply meets the eye. It says, Mr. Speaker, and if I should just go to the objects and reasons. It says that it has become necessary to facilitate the election of a deputy speaker in order to ensure the smooth running of the affairs of the National Assembly. Of course, that is a worthwhile, noble cause and so on. I want that. I mean, I've tried, I think I've done as much as anybody here to try to get a deputy speaker. The Attorney General will tell you, when I wasn't happy, and my cabinet colleague will tell you, when I wasn't happy with us not having a deputy speaker, I went to see him personally in his office. I said, AG, I would like to see how we could think and so on. And AG, I didn't like the answer he gave me. But the truth is, I didn't like the answer anybody gave me because I just wanted a deputy speaker. I went not only the Attorney General, I went to see Charles Wilkin in his office to speak about that. I went to see Emil Ferdinand to speak about it. I went to see Tapley Seaton to speak about it. I went any lawyer who would engage me. I tried to engage them on the matter. I spoke continuously to the members of the opposition, the leader of the opposition. I spoke to all of them about how we could get this done, because I wanted it done. But Mr. Speaker, I'm saying that there are ways to get things done that remove any suspicion, any undercurrent, and genuine and sincere efforts to make things operate properly. Mr. Speaker, I am on record in this honorable house, standing right where I am here, and saying to the country that I don't think the House is properly constituted because we want our deputy speaker. The member for 6 said, he was sitting just there. He said, Sam, nothing wrong with the House. Your House is properly constituted. I turned to the Speaker. I said, Speaker, this is your house. You are in charge. You must get this house in order. I did it right standing here. I'm on record of doing that. So you're saying that I didn't want that.
Of course, it's the parliament. Anyway.
And so, Mr. Speaker, I was doing all that I could have done. It didn't work out. We are now over 3 years into the term. And I'm saying that this way of solving that problem is too fundamental. That is, this ain't just form now, this is structure. To use the move of the bill terms. It is reform. You can't just come in the middle of a term and do any kind of reform like that without any reference to the electorate. And I'm saying these things must be done properly. I'm all for that. But it must be done in a way that protects and promotes our democratic process and our democratic way of life. The second reason was modern government business has become more complex than ever. Hence, the complexity of running government business inevitably requires additional human resources. I'm going to come back to that. And 3, it is necessary to improve upon the complexion of Parliament by introducing new people while taking into account gender balance. This is to ensure that the contributions made in Parliament benefit generally from the views of the entire community. All laudable, worthy, noble aspiration. But Mr. Speaker, we have to look beyond that. Let me just deal with number 2. Reason number 2. And my view that reason number 2 is really nothing more than its number 2. The whole idea that we have to increase the senators, because modern government business has become more complex than ever. Hence, the complexity of running government becomes the inevitable, requires additional resources. Mr. Speaker, where you want that is in the people who manage the system, the civil service. Not in parliament, not senators. You need, Mr. Speaker, to build capacity, and I've been saying that so often in the last 3 years, Mr. Speaker. For the last 3 years, I've been emphasizing that we have to match skills with tasks. We have to increase training, both on the job and off the job. We have to build capacity. I see that, Mr. Speaker, especially in this new portfolio that I've had in the last 3 years, where we need, Mr. Speaker, the Labor Department, in the Immigration Department. We have been trying now to civilize the Immigration Department for the last 3 years. We have been trying to do all kinds of reforms to get the labor code in the Labor Department for the last 3 years. And even before that, we need to build capacity. We need human resource, but not senators. Senators not going to do that. It is the public servants who run the machinery. That is what is needed, Mr. Speaker. That is what is needed. And we are doing a lot in that direction, but we need to do more. It is not a question of just increase. You think by increasing the senators from 3 to 6, then our system is going to become more efficient and effective? No. So this thing that you want to increase the senators because government business has become more complex than ever. Hence the complexity of running a government business inevitably requires additional human resource. You need human resource. Well, not even more, but you need better trained human resource. Maybe it ain't only, maybe you need some quantity, but you need quality and quantity. That is where we have to go. And so, Mr. Speaker, that is what that is about in number 2. We need, and we see that throughout the service. We need, Mr. Speaker, to improve these matters. Mr. Speaker, in terms of number 3, it is necessary to improve upon the complexion of Parliament by introducing new people while taking into account gender balance. This is to ensure that the contributions made in Parliament benefit generally from the views of the entire community. Mr. Speaker, I recognize that. In fact, I said that at the beginning of this term. At the beginning of this parliamentary term, that was one of my submissions. Because I saw it as being necessary and important to freshen up Parliament. And this was an opportunity. I said that right at the beginning. So, nobody telling me anything new. No. This is what I said. I didn't even think it. I said it. I expressed it. I proposed it. I submitted it. It was a submission from me. Oh, well, of course, but a submission. That this was something we had to do. And so, Mr. Speaker, I'm always for that. I saw it. I think we could have brought in a young person, we could have brought in a woman, we could have brought in whoever. In fact, Mr. Speaker, I suggested how it could be done. And so, Mr. Speaker, this is nothing new. And so now to come in the middle of a parliamentary term to tell me this is what we want, something I was saying to folks, something I submitted, 3 years before, I find really a little unpalatable, especially in the circumstances. And we're not fooling anybody now, Mr. Speaker. We're not fooling anybody. People are aware of what's happening, what's going on. And so, Mr. Speaker, I don't submit that that is a good reason for that at this time. Not that I don't believe that there should be some reform of this parliament, In fact, we have been toying with this idea for the last maybe 12 years. The constitutional reform, we've been talking about that. But because, Mr. Speaker, and I'm sure people are aware, there are problems with the same constitution. Because the constitution specifically says how the constituency could be improved, But somehow that is causing some difficulties. And so people don't want to go that route. The ratio, how it should be done in the Constitution. In the Constitution. And we've been toying with that. It is how it's going to be done. Yeah. So, Mr. Speaker, it's not that we don't know,
Absolutely, hoping the injunction.
And so, Mr. Speaker,
or you like want to have your cake and eat it. You can't work like that. Come back door. You are God that we need to increase the boundaries in order to win an election.
Let's go member for number 2.
yeah, Mr. Speaker, so I'm saying for all those reasons, for all those reasons, the 3 reasons given, the Deputy Speaker, the increase in thing, and the complexion, widening complexion, Mr. Speaker. Those are things that we have been canvassing. And I'm saying that at this time is now. You see, because, Mr. Speaker, it is interesting that the timing of this bill, it is instructive that the timing of this bill this bill, Mr. Speaker, has come at a time when we have been raising issues in the Parliament on certain matters. And I just find it a little bit discomforting, disquieting, that at a time when issues are being raised, and issues of genuine concern, Mr. Speaker, genuine concern about the country and its development, which is what people elect us to do. That is why people elect us to Parliament, to raise issues about the development of the country and what's happening. That is our responsibility. That is a sacred responsibility. That is what the oath says, Mr. Speaker. I take an oath here. My oath says that I take here before the people in this Parliament. I do swear that I will honor, uphold, and preserve the Constitution of St. Christopher and Nevis and the law, that I will conscientiously, impartially, and to the best of my ability discharge my duties as a representative and do right to all manner of people without fear or favor, affection or ill will. That's the oath I took, Mr. Speaker. I have a duty to do that. And so, Mr. Speaker, we two members from the government benches, two of us here. There's no secret, Mr. Speaker. This was an open debate. This happened in Parliament. Open debate in Parliament that we had some concerns about the land for debt swap. And really, you see, Mr. Speaker, if those things were dealt with in a different manner, what happened in this house would not have happened, you know, because the Attorney General will tell you that I got my order paper on the Thursday night. I called the Attorney General immediately. I didn't get it. The first thing, as soon as he opened his door on Friday morning, I went in to see the AG. I said, AG, this is unsatisfactory. I don't like this. You know how I could be getting this thing? I was totally confused. Didn't know what this thing is about. Less than 24 hours. That violated everything. But, Mr. Speaker, I thought that I could still save the day because it is an important matter. In fact, I don't have anything more important in the country than the land acquisition of 1975. Let me tell you how important this thing is. And I read this when I was debating the thing. This is the quote from Robert Bradshaw, who said, and I quote, "We are gathered here this morning collectively to make history by assuming the greatest responsibility which could fall to a people." 1975. And at Buckley's, my constituency, we have always been sensitive to land issues in number 3. Always. I remember when Fairview was trying to sell lands around Fairview in order to develop the Fairview Inn and so on. We almost had a riot in the constituency. People in constituency number 3 are very sensitive. That is what impacts me and influences me. Always very sensitive. They don't take these matters lightly. And so I thought I was doing a duty to the country, to my constituency, to the people of the country. That is what Bradshaw said. The greatest responsibility which could fall to a people, namely to take over by law absolute ownership and control of all the really productive lands in this isle of our birth for our mutual benefit and for the benefit of posterity forever. This is what was said. And to make sure that people understood what he meant, he didn't leave it so by just an acquisition in the court. He canvassed it in an election. He said, I want the imprimatur of the people. So in the 1975 election, 1st December, this was an issue for the people. That the Sugar Land should never ever.
Honourable member for number 3. Let me understand. I mean, what is it you how does it have relevance to the bill that is before us?
Say that again.
The land, because we have debated the land issue before. I'm hoping that it's not.
I'm just trying to say, Mr. Speaker, I'm making a connection. How this bill came about. I'm saying that this follows. I'm a little bit uneasy. I'm a little bit disquieted because this central bill came immediately following.
Yeah, but I hear you. But still, we have debated the land bill before, and I
I'm
really,
not debating it.
No, hold on. Allow me to finish.
Sorry.
We have debated the land bill before and passed the land bill. What I'm saying is that I do not want anybody to go back into any substantive presentation on the land matter. If you're making a relevant thing, then make the point and then move on, because we have debated that already.
You
As per the rules.
Mr. Speaker, this is just passing reference. This isn't no substantial debate. I'm just
Okay,
telling you.
it sounded so for me.
No.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm sorry if it sounds so. I don't mean to. I just say.
Okay, go
Because
ahead.
I'm making the point, Mr. Speaker, is what affected me. People are talking about. You see, people are talking about traitor and going away and all kind of things. There's nobody, Mr. Speaker, nobody could question my loyalty to the Labour movement, to the Labour Party. Nobody could question my fidelity with the Labour movement and the Labour Party. Nobody must do that.
Okay.
Because you speak passionately about what you believe, what you grew up understanding to be true. How somebody want to blame you for that? You're giving the country the benefit of your experience and you're bringing and what you believe. That's what people elect me for. I mean, it's just madness, Mr. Speaker. It is just madness. It is wrong. It is unfair. It is not right. Just not right. And so, Mr. Speaker, I want to say that, and I'm going to close. I want to say, permit me to say one thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
One thing about this thing, and I'm going to close off with it. Because it means a lot to me, Mr. Speaker.
Go ahead.
Anybody who knows me, Sam Condor, this Sam Condor here, knows about my commitment, my loyalty, and my passion for the working class people of this country, for the labor movement. I know what the labor movement stands for. My mother, the last time my mother voted was in the 1st of December 1975. She was paralyzed down her left side. We took out her bed. I tell her, stay in your bed. You don't have to go vote. Gratcha don't win. She said, you don't understand. I am going to vote for you and for my grandchildren. My first child born January 1976. She was voting for a child, for my child who wasn't born yet. You understand what that means to me? It is me. That's what that means to me. My sick mother, I couldn't get her to stay in she bed. She going to vote. Even though I tell her, I was doing the count, I was working in Central Bastille. I knew what the count was. And I knew Gratcha had won. She said, you're missing the point. I am going to vote for my grandchildren, my first child born in months later. But she was going, those are the conditions under which I grew up. I understand what this thing. And Mr. Speaker, I was saying more. The last thing I wanted to say on this is that I wrote extensively. I've studied this thing. The land acquisition, it means everything to me. You know what I write about the land acquisition? In 1980, I said, Mr. Speaker, and I quote, the social life of the country tends to be under the influence of the system of land tenure. The Land Acquisition Act has changed the mode of production. It has transformed the whole pattern of social power and prestige, and it has opened up the economic horizons for the people of this country for generations to come. That's why I write. That's how I see the land. I was writing this in 1980. So if I come, yeah. So Mr. Speaker, I want to move on. I want to apologize, but it means a lot to me. I'm passionate about these things.
That's okay.
And so I'm saying that it's just a little bit disturbing to me, And people have to be true to themselves. People have to say what they believe. I can't be a hypocrite. I'm not no man of convenience. With how things going, you jump on and how things going with side, you going look like you're going to take. I've been true to myself, true to my God, and true to my people. That's what I believe in. That's what I stand for. And if I will die, I will die for that. So, Mr. Speaker, that's it. And so, I was saying, Mr. Speaker, that it is ironic and instructive that I should come at this time. And so I'm a little bit disquiet. And Mr. Speaker, I want to basically say that it is really instructive as I see it. Because I see these, we were talking earlier about the governance issues. And I see that these governance issues are really instructive as a manifestation of the conflict that I see that has been happening, that has prevailed in the system at this time. And the truth be told, Mr. Speaker, I believe that this is the crux of the matter. These governance issues are what have brought us to this stage. Really, that is my view. And we're talking, Mr. Speaker, about the Constitution. And I believe that we should always observe the Constitution. But I believe there are certain nuances, certain differences, certain... Because the Constitution is a document that tries to capture the hopes and aspirations of a people. And so you have to make it a living document. You can't just stay right there what I said. It's how it relates. You have to bring it off the paper and make it a living document, and that's what you have to do.
That's true.
And I believe, Mr. Speaker, that is why we need to not only observe the Constitution, but in terms of the regulations of the civil service and so on. The protocols and procedures. And I believe it is those problems, the governance issues that have brought us to where we are. The Constitution and the regulations have spoken about how the civil service operates, how ministers operate. The Constitution. These are how ministers operate, the role of ministers, the role of the cabinet, the role of the permanent secretary, the role of the civil servants, clearly laid out. And it is the lack of observance of those things that causes us problems. And so, Mr. Speaker, we have to get it right. I am all for part of getting it right. That is my responsibility, and I will not shirk that responsibility at all, whatever the cost. Whatever the cost, I will not shirk those responsibilities. I have to do what is right at all times. The Constitution, the regulations, they are there to direct how it is that the public business is to be carried out. It is for the protection of all involved. For ministers, for permanent secretary, for civil servants, generally. It is for all involved, those who lead the different sectors, those who work in the sector and the people in the country in general. That's what it's about. But if we don't have strict observance of them, see what the Constitution says about ministers and so on, the relations between ministers and permanent secretaries and all of that. It's there in the Constitution. We have to observe them to the strict letter of the law. When we don't do those things, we get in trouble. The minister exercises general direction and control over his ministry. The permanent secretary functions subject to the direction and control of the minister. The minister. A permanent secretary only took out one minister at a time. That's the constitutional requirement. That's the regulations. It is those things, Mr. Speaker. That's what I'm arguing for. This is my presentation. You observe not only the letter of the law, but the spirit of the law. You have to go behind the framework and see what they were thinking. So for people to tell me that the Constitution said 2/3, and so you could just double it like that, when there's no history, there's no history of that. The very same people who write the Constitution, when they were applying it and implementing it, they didn't do that. They were sensitive to how things are supposed to operate. Mr. Speaker, I grew up in a Labour Party where you could dissent and argue. And publicly, the leader, Bradshaw, he grew up under Bradshaw. I knew Bradshaw and Southwell and France, I knew them well. I knew Bryant and Limo and St. Amprin, I knew them well. The first triumvirate, the second triumvirate, I knew them personally well. I learned at their feet. I'm a protege of all those people. What I want to do, Mr. Speaker, is to contribute, to add, to promote. You have to be careful, Speaker.
Honourable Member, your allotted time has expired.
Mr. Speaker, I'm sure you wouldn't mind giving me a little bit more time.
What time you're looking at?
30 minutes?
Say it again?
30 minutes? I'm not going to take as much of that. But
the Parliament, well, as practice, I'll have to put the question to Parliament. The question is that the Honourable Member be allowed an additional 30 minutes. Those in favour? Aye. Those against? Go right ahead, sir.
Thank you very much. I want to try and wrap up now, Mr. Speaker. I was saying that these rules and so on, Mr. Speaker, as people say in the Constitution, but you have to interpret it and get it and so on and make sure we do it. But we have to follow these things. Not only the Constitution, but the regulation, they're enshrined, that's why they're enshrined in law. It's not for joke, we have to observe them. So when the Constitution states that the minister shall exercise control, general control and direction of his ministry, and that the PS is subject to such direction, that's what it means. And so, Mr. Speaker, I want to say, basically, that I want to basically end as I started by saying that really, I know the controversy and all that's going on. I'm not stupid. I know what's happening. I feel it every day. I live it every day. It has been personal pressure on me. But I want to say that the measure of a man, like I said, the measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience. You could take that easy thing out. And sometimes I just ask, why me? Why me? If it is possible, take this cup from me. But then I say, not my will, thy will be done. And if that is my lot, then I just have to accept that that's my lot and to do it. But I honestly want to be the best that I can for my people and my country. That's how I've lived all my life. Not no convenience, jump in here and jump in there. And this today and that tomorrow. Consistently committed to this cause, the cause of the people. That's how I live. And so I say, Mr. Speaker, this labor movement that I have embraced all my life, which I belong, has a long and proud history to principles and of a relentless commitment to the cause of social, political, and economic justice and truth. And it is to these principles and to this commitment that I will fearlessly be true. whatever it costs me. Whatever it costs me, it really does not matter. And so, there comes a time sometimes, Mr. Speaker, there comes a time when one must take the position that is neither safe, nor politic, nor popular. But he must do it because his conscience tells him it is right so to do. And I want to do that. I want to end, Mr. Speaker, by just to say that I give God thanks for the opportunity to serve. First of all, my constituents and this country. I want to thank my constituents for the confidence they continue to repose in me, and for the wide cross-section of the community for their continued support, praise, and understanding. I know, Mr. Speaker, I know that I serve a faithful God. And so, I just want to recommit my will to God, whom I serve, and my service to my country, and my countrymen, and my countrymen. So help me, God. Mr. Speaker, maybe I should just say it now. I said I was going to speak on the adjournment, but maybe I should just say it now before I say it. I want to thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the kind words you expressed this morning in terms of my tenure of service as leader of government business. I want to thank you most sincerely. I want to thank the Attorney General and now the present leader of government business for what he said about me. I want to thank him. And I want to say to him that I am available. I don't know how much I know, but I try. And whatever I know, I'm prepared to share with him. I'm prepared to work with him and to cooperate with him to continue to move the parliamentary agenda forward. I think one other member opposite spoke and said something about it. Mr. Speaker, a long list of persons have passed through this House from 1995 to present while I was leader of government business. And I want to say that I've enjoyed an excellent relationship with every member of the House, without exception. And I will continue to do that. And I want to thank them, to thank all of them, past and present, some of them dead. But I want to thank all, past and present, who I've interacted with. I want to thank them. I've never had any real difficulty working with anybody. I've had the full cooperation of the members of the House, and I want to thank them. You, Mr. Speaker, the clerk, the deputy clerk, the stenographers, I've always had an excellent, and I intend to continue that as long as it is the will of God and the wish of the people. I will continue to do that to serve the people and to serve Parliament. So I want to thank you for the kind thing you said. Mr. Speaker, may it please you. Sorry for taking so much of your time.
All right, that's your time. Thank you.